Now, although Manchester City have not had the best season, there is definitely a silver lining with young players coming through who have been excellent in the last few months, but also new signings been given time to develop and some of them not needing it. And that is the same with Omar Marmoush, who was signed for big money in January but has already paid a lot of that back to City and has become a key player in the absence of Erling Haaland. But why is that? Let's get into it. Now, it's safe to say with the videos I've done about Manchester City in the last few months, I am very happy with the signings that they made in the January transfer window. While obviously spending a lot of money, it is clear the club is going through a rebuild, and not only a stylistic way with how they play, but also with the young players coming through, it's going to take time for them to develop. Now, the one player that they did sign in January, maybe other than Gonzalez, who you expected to have an instant impact, was Omar Marmoush, who made a name for himself in the Bundesliga, scoring a tremendous amount of goals and getting a tremendous amount of assists for Frankfurt over the last 18 months, which has seen him become the new Egyptian king. Now, since he has joined Manchester City, he has not slowed down, and while scoring now 6 goals in 12 in the Premier League overall and being very effective in the FA Cup semi-final against Forest, I think it's fair to say he has been already a hit signing. Now, Omar Marmoush has proven he can be a brilliant player that plays on the left and up front. Now, originally when he came in, he was on the left and Haaland was up front, but in possession you would often see them change quite a lot, with Omar Marmoush even sticking to his left-sided role but coming centrally in behind Haaland sometimes and being that person that they could allow Haaland to head the ball down to, especially when they were being pressed. We've seen this a lot actually this season, where Manchester City have kind of changed their style to be a little bit more transitional, and they're not the only team. I think Arsenal have also changed it, and Chelsea in certain ways this year, and it just gives you that option of when you are getting pressed in especially and you're trying to play through it against a good pressing team, you're able to kick the ball long to one of your strikers who can head the ball down to the other player playing close to him. We actually see this a lot by Marino at Arsenal, and Haaland was doing this before he got injured, which Marmoush was working brilliantly off. Now, when you look at Marmoush's average positions, you can see they aren't on the left like you expect, but a lot of them are centrally still, and this is also his combined minutes while playing up front as well, and it's quite clear that even when he's in that striker role, he is much more preferred to be in this left-sided position out of the possession. Now, a great example of them still doing this even though Erling Haaland hasn't been here was against Forest at the weekend. You can clearly see that in this game Marmoush picked the ball up a lot on that left-hand side, and even though he was the striker on the day, you would often see people like Grealish and even Rico Lewis, who has ended up playing as a bit of a secondary striker slash attacking midfielder in this game, where he was picking up central positions. This often was quite intelligent because it kept pulling out Milenkovic, who kept having to come over from a centre-back role, and because he was making his switch with the fullback because Grealish was coming inside, it was just a lot of ground for him to cover, and he was really struggling with them wide positions. Now, I will say with Marmoush playing as this left winger, I personally think he has been the most impactful for City in that position in a while. Not only does he seem very comfortable at just being very confident at going at players, he has a real understanding of tempo, of when to calm the ball down and pass it inside, and when to actually run at defenders. This and his great pace and technical ability have seen him be so effective at creating chances for City down that side. He was so good when Haaland was in the team, where Haaland would be able to sit in the middle and he could take players on that width, but also there's moments where his positioning off the ball is so key in other areas. He's got a brilliant understanding of when to play in between the lines or not. We've seen quite a lot this season where Vardiel has been very much pushed up when he's played in left back into this sort of left wing position, and even Nico O'Reilly has done this a lot, being very good at recovery and having that pace to cover, which allows Marmoush to finally come inside. This is where Man City in possession have more of a two-striker setup, where Haaland will be on that right half space and he'll be in that left, and this is where he can do his brilliant slight touches between the lines and under pressure, where he can get shots away. And he showed a brilliant understanding of being able to change his positions with Haaland when they're both up front to play off each other. Sometimes Haaland would go back post and Marmoush would go front post, or vice versa, and that is what really shows a great striker, when they can work off other players around them who might be taking up that same space, which Marmoush has proved. But one of the reasons why Marmoush can be so effective in this City side is because he's kind of allowed to have freedom. We've said this a lot with City's system over the last few years, and people have complained about players like Grealish and Doku having that creativity kind of sipped out of them because they have to play the system. But Marmoush, as much as he does have maybe systemal ways he has to play, especially off the ball, there is quite a lot of want for him to actually create, especially with the players out injured right now, with De Bruyne not having the best season and Haaland obviously being injured. This is seen him continue this the amount of shots he is having. He has had over 4 shots per 90 in total, which puts him in the top 2% in Europe for forwards and the top 1% for wingers. And it is proven by every single time this guy receives the ball, unless he's out really far wide and wants to take people on and create at that point, he is always looking for ways to get shots away for him or his team. Now, there is going to be times where he doesn't necessarily take the right shots, I would say. There's a few times, even in that Nottingham Forest game at the weekend, where they come a bit centrally, maybe do a 1-2 and come inside, and he will just let it rip, which you don't hate, but he does do it a lot, and this alludes to shots going over the bar, which I think Pep Guardiola probably wants to stop a little bit more, but given the season they've had, I think they're kind of allowing him to have these shots. However, just shooting all the time can be a negative and a positive no matter how you look at it. It depends sort of where you see that in the game, but I do think for City it's quite a positive they have, because they do have quite shot shy players, especially out on the wing. I don't think Savinho is the person that has the most shots in the world. Grealish and Doku don't really do that, especially Doku, who's that more creative individual dribbler who likes going to the byline. And Marmoush is someone that can do that as well, maybe not to the same flair level, but can still go past players, especially with his pace, but also be that player that can work in them tight areas to get shots away and dribble past players, which is really good. And the thing that really does stand out is that we've mentioned all this brilliant ability from tight areas, and in these tight areas that he can still produce shots and create things at nearly 5 shot creating actions per 90, but it's also that moments where Man City can now be that transitional side. Even against Forest, who they had more of the ball of and really dominated, I would say, in many areas, there's still a certain ounces of Man City that they want teams to push up against them or have their backline very far up, because they always have that notion of going over the top or transitioning quickly. Even in that game, you could get the ball out to Marmoush, who would come maybe a bit deeper to receive, and he's willing to turn instantly and run at players into that space to get the team up the pitch. Now, without his sort of stunt double being Erling Haaland, it is quite hard for maybe him to always do everything by himself. Sometimes you'd want someone also running with you or being that sort of powerhouse that you can have there, but he's still very effective, and he can give the ball to other players that run up with him and give them areas to shoot, which he did against Forest. And there's multiple times this season where Man City have struggled maybe to get anything going, so Edison or Ortega or anyone will just smash a ball to the other side of the pitch where he can bring it down, run through and try and score, which you see quite a lot of the time Man City do, especially in bigger games against sides that are a little bit more confident against them now. And from his stats this season, he's got over 3.5 progressive carries per 90, which puts him in the top 3% of forwards. He's got over 2.5 progressive passes as well, being shown he loves passing it to other players, and he's received over 7.5 progressive passes, which I think proves that he is that player that loves running in behind and getting into them areas. And he works incredibly hard off the ball, helping them in defensive areas as well. And he kind of allows Haaland also to be that player that can be on them centre-backs one-on-one. We spoke about this before, but when he played against maybe that Chelsea game a few months ago and even that Newcastle game, when there's a physically opposing defenders, it is easy for them to maybe manhandle Haaland in the 2v1. But with Marmoush there now and playing a lot more centrally at times, maybe the left half channel, he can pull one of them players away and allow Haaland to have a one-on-one against one of the defenders, where you would expect him to win at least a couple of them per game to get through. This is why even against Forest, when he's pitting Milenkovic away, it's important people come into them central areas to sort of bait Murillo into going towards them or staying in that line. It wasn't the best solution in the world, I think, for the future, but it worked really well having Rico Lewis sort of just keep running at these defenders and finding that space. And you saw it with their goal. They didn't know whether to go towards him. It was too late received into him, and they're very quick on the actions to get the ball in and get it in there, which was one of the reasons they scored that first goal of the weekend. And for all of the complaints this season that people have had about the athleticism of Man City and maybe the aggressiveness and physicality, Marmoush isn't the most physical player in the world, but he can create brilliant separation, and he is really quick and works really hard. And I think he has been one of the big successes, but that whole left-hand side over the last couple of weeks has been a massive success for City, which is why their form, in my opinion, has really skyrocketed. And it's not just him, it's Nico O'Reilly, who is a brilliant overlapping player. I did a video about him if you want to go and watch that. And also Vardy Yao has been excellent in defence and also been such a great helper. And even people like Kovacic have really got a lot confident over the last few weeks. I know on the right a little bit more, but he still wants to run at players, and this is really helping City just have that sort of threat to always be able to quickly transition, which is worrying teams and making sure teams don't press them as much, so they don't have to worry about that physicality too much as they were before. Now, going into next season, you expect probably a better bounce back from City and better players probably to be signed, especially in their midfield roles. I think can sort of iron out them problems they've had since Rodri's not been there. But there's going to be at least some sort of recollection that this forward line of Haaland, Marmoush and whoever you want to put on the right like probably Savinho at the moment, will work in certain levels. And I think Marmoush right now as a striker option is still kind of playing as a winger, as much as they are getting him in the most comfortable positions for him to shoot and help the team. And there's other ways off the ball that he is helping as well. But I will say with the pressing, it's definitely quite clear. I think City's pressing has taken a little bit of a downturn since Haaland's been out, and there's obviously been some change within the team. And I think Marmoush is not really ready to be that main conductor of the press in the central areas, and is better on that left side when the angles are a little bit more favourable to him. So I think in this game against Forest, we actually saw that a lot, where he would be mostly pressing the left side, where he can close that space on the left side. And then you have people like Nunez and Nico O'Reilly in the fullback positions ready to jump, ready just in case it goes past Savinho or Marmoush. A bit conservative, but actually worked really well in this game, and I think that's what they should stick with, but obviously more into that in the future. Now, it's not always perfect with Marmoush. Obviously, you don't want to sugarcoat it and pretend he's the best player in the world. I think there is some issues maybe with his patience. I've seen a few people say this as well, where he maybe rushes things a little bit sometimes. You know, the amount of shots he has per game is probably not that healthy. You know, I'd said you don't really mind it, but I don't know if Pep or the City team would want him to consistently be wasting opportunities. I mean, even in this game, he had 4 or 5 shots, and most of them weren't even that really close to the goal. There's always things about dribbling as well where it can definitely improve, but he's still not a really natural dribbler to me. Someone that works better in space, and in them tight areas he's still learning, which I think is fine at the moment. But ultimately, he's been an incredible signing for City, and I think more importantly, he will be in the future, not only because he has played well, and I do want to emphasize that he has played really well in this time, but it's also them things like we said that he does off the ball, on the ball, and helps City play in a more transitional based way. Maybe not permanently, but at least gives them the option to, which they've needed considering their real creative players haven't really been good enough this season, unfortunately for them. Now, if you like this video, please like and subscribe, and if you want to watch my City video recently, watch my O'Reilly one from a couple of weeks ago. Thank you guys for watching. Appreciate you as always. See you in the next one.